going too fast. I'm taking 3.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh, no.
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at some replays that were sent in. The first one, we're taking a look at a replay sent in by Salixczar, and he's also divisioned up with some other NGA members there, Battleship Constitution and Rex. Rex is in his York, and Constitution is in another Scharnhorst. Now, important to note here about this battle with Salixczar and the Scharnhorst is that this is his second battle, I believe, in the Scharnhorst. Yes, Salixczar was one of those lucky people who got the who got the Scharnhorst out of a Christmas crate, which, by the way, you can still purchase in the premium shop. I believe you can still purchase them up to the 18th, if I'm not mistaken. And that's pretty amazing. I have been thinking, actually, about getting some more myself, but I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? Anyway. In the Scharnhorst. Now, Scharnhorst is, of course, a really nice German battleship at Tier 7. Don't get me wrong, I actually really do enjoy the guys now as well. I mean, as long as you understand, or at least I think as long as you understand the German dispersion and its temperament, especially on the old guys now. I still do enjoy the guys now, but the Scharnhorst does have a special place for me, because my god, this thing... I sail in the Scharnhorst with my Hindenburg captain, and he's 19 points anyway. He has demolition expert, so I generally spam the high explosive when I'm in the Scharnhorst, and amazing things do happen. But this time around, we're actually going to see a lot of AP damage, which is quite exciting, because the Scharnhorst, I mean, you know, just because I use HE doesn't mean it's not capable of really amazing things with the armored piercing, and it definitely is. And we're going to see some of that, and we did get pretty lucky here with the matchmaking as well. I mean, we're not too out-tiered, which, you know, at Tier 7 can happen, especially if you start seeing a lot of Tier 9s, but depending on the ship, sometimes the out-tiering isn't as bad. Now, we are firing off some high explosive here at the beginning, because you'll notice, I mean, the team, right, we're not really exactly sure what we're going to do. Shards is a different map, that's for sure, especially with A and C being smaller. I actually really do enjoy this map. I find it pretty interesting, especially considering when you spawn, where you spawn basically is going to tell you, you know, which cap zones your team should be heading to. So, you know, depending on where you are, maybe you want to go B and C or B and A. And it's all about the B cap zone on this map. If you go into those smaller cap zones, those are generally death traps for large ships. I mean, it's not too often that you're going to get a whole lot done in there, unless, you know, you do get really lucky, or maybe you show up into that cap zone and the enemy doesn't necessarily show up in the same amount of force. It could work out, but it's not very often. I always like to go for B myself, unless I'm in a destroyer or a British cruiser or my Kutuzov that has a smoke. I'm not going to generally go in there. I am going to be focused on B for the most part, because B is going to be the linchpin here of the battle. It just is, especially with the two north and south points being so small and surrounded by islands like that. It just is the way it works on this map. Anyway, we can see Salixczar is in a bit of reverse. We do have some enemies there on the fringes of B, but a lot of our team does seem to be spread out for the most part, right? Like, we have people in the south, we have people in the north, not really looking so good. The people in the south, I suppose, are preventing the capture of that southern point right now, which is great. We did lose the northern point, and we are in the process of contesting the middle point, B, which is the most critical one. So we're really going to want to get in here. We can see this as well. I mean, Salixczar is bringing it up back into, well, yeah, full speed, I suppose. And we're going to start dealing with some of these enemy ships here as they start coming up. We've got our armor piercing loaded, and we do have an enemy Russian cruiser off in the distance here. So, you know, good things can pretty much happen. How is everyone doing on your Santa Convoy missions, I wonder? I'm about to get my Leander. I should get the Leander this evening. I really want to get the Budyani. That is what I want. I want it so that I don't have to buy the Budyani back, because I have to buy the Budyani back. I mean, it's just an amazing cruiser. So it's just going to have to happen. But if I can get myself to the Budyani, that would be amazing as well. Plus the Leander, as some of you may recall, I didn't actually keep the Leander, so it'll be nice to get her back with some premium camouflage as well. That won't be too bad at all. So we did manage to get the kill there on the enemy ship, which is great. We don't have to worry about the player anymore. We have a New Orleans here off in the distance. Very low health on that New Orleans, so we just have to blow on the player, and that player should go down as well. We can see some enemy battleships off in the distance, so a little concerning. There we go. New Orleans is gone, and our second kill. There we have an enemy North Carolina, so we want to be careful with the North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina is fully capable of just dishing out a whole bunch of damage here to us, so we do want to be careful. Unfortunately for this player is seems to be adamant about stopping broadside on to the Scharnhorst here, which is probably not such a great move, especially considering the distances are closing. And as the distance close, the Scharnhorst AP is going to become more and more effective, especially if you get a nice shot off with some good dispersion or with some good grouping. You could end up doing a real crap ton amount of damage to an enemy battleship. So we've done a bit of damage here to the enemy North Carolina. We can see the North Carolina is starting to move forward. In the meantime, the enemy has managed to cap the southern point, but we have managed to capture the B cap zone. This again is the most critical cap zone. So even though we don't have north and we don't have south, if we can still hold on to the center of the map here with this B cap zone, we would still have a chance at winning the battle, right? Now again, consulting our minimap, we do see some allies in the north pushing onto that C cap zone, so excellent. This is good, right? If we can hold the B zone, allow those players up there to do what they're going to do in the north and take that zone, we could come out on top, which would not be too bad at all. We're still dealing with the enemy North Carolina here. You can see that we are on fire, but it's not too big of a deal. I mean, we do have some hit points to help out. And then we have the hero of the day here. This enemy allied Leningrad comes in and smokes us. This is fantastic. I love it when destroyers do this. It always, generally works out very, very well. So there we go. We get a quick shot off into the enemy cruiser and get a nice citadel on the player as well. We can see the enemy North Carolina is now outside of our firing. It's behind the island here, the mountain thing, so we can't get through there. So we're going to start focusing on this enemy Budyani. If we can get that player gone, that would be decent, because then we don't have to worry about getting set on fire. Although it does look as though some of these enemy battleships are coming forward, and with the smoke that we have provided by the Allied Leningrad, we are in a pretty decent position here to be able to potentially deal with some of these enemy ships. So we see an enemy Nagato coming out, and it does look like the enemy Nagato is slowing down. So you can see Salixczar is just sort of judging as to where and when he's going to fire his torpedoes, right? Making sure as best as he possibly can that he's going to hit some torpedoes on the enemy Nagato. Looking at the enemy Nagato, we can see that the hull does have the 2 stacks on it, so we know that this is a stock hull enemy Nagato. So this is actually pretty decent for us. We are in smoke, we still have our AP loaded, and we are just going to start pumping away at the enemy Nagato. In the meantime, it does look as though the ship, the enemy Nagato, is moving forward now, so the torpedoes we launched aren't actually going to hit the player, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Get a nice citadel there in the Nagato, bring the Nagato down to it's probably a little below half health, it looks like, so this is decent, and our damage numbers are, climbing, which is also very decent. The one thing, of course, the Scharnhorst doesn't have on the guys now is the range on the secondary, but as you can see with the guns and the Scharnhorst, not really that big of a deal. So there we go, enemy Nagato is gone. We're up to 3 kills now, I do believe, and we do still have some enemy ships off here in the background. So we have this enemy Nuremberg. We are going to have to deal with the player. Nuremberg is a great cruiser. I kept my Nuremberg. I do really enjoy the Nuremberg, but she doesn't have a lot of armor. She doesn't do very well against battleships, so ideally that player over there in the Nuremberg is trying to sail away out of this situation as fast as he possibly can. we still do have our armor piercing loaded up, and we can see the Nuremberg has decided to close the distance on us, probably trying to get some torpedoes off. Wrong move, friend. Now we're up to 4 kills and 89,000 damage. Not too bad at all. We're losing some hit points here, unfortunately, but whatever, you know, we do still have some heals. Just need to wait for those to come down off cooldown before we can start healing ourselves once again. And consulting the minimap, we do see that our allies there in the north have managed to capture the C zone, so perfect, right? Again, B is the, you know, critical point on shards. It just is. There we go. Get the Kraken. Fantastic. So we're up to 5 kills now in our Scharnhorst. We do have another enemy Nagato here off in the distance. If we take a look at this player's hull, we can see the 1 smokestack, meaning that this player does have the upgraded hull. Unfortunate. But we do need to still deal with the player. Now, one thing that we do have going for us here, you know, with the Scharnhorst, is that if we go bow into the target, we can really mitigate a whole lot of damage that, you know, could potentially be dealt out to us here. Salixczar is healing himself, which is good because we've gone down into a red level of hit points remaining, which is not so great. We are firing away with some of our secondary battery as we can at the Nagato here. Nagato returns shots with some of his secondary battery, but the Nagato secondary battery really isn't, I don't think it's going to be as good even as the Scharnhorst. It's pretty deadly close in, I suppose, but yeah, Scharnhorst is pretty deadly as well, especially considering, yes, torpedoes, of course, you cannot forget. And people, it still does happen, they forget Scharnhorst has torpedoes. I don't know why. Scharnhorst guys now interprets. They all have torpedoes. Be careful. We do get close into the enemy Nagato, and you can see, you know, upgraded hull or not, our armor-piercing shells at these ranges are just going to do massive amounts of damage. I think it was about 22,000 damage there. It looks like the Nagato is going for last-ditch effort of a ram, but we can see some of our allies in the background are supporting us and do manage to take down the Nagato before the player is able to ram us. Fantastic. Yes, we did take some shots there from an ally. The ally does apologize. You know, no big deal. I mean, right? They didn't do too much damage. Salixczar's still alive. Both players shrug it off. And this is really how, you know, you want to politely handle these sorts of oops situations. Rather than exploding at people, that never accomplishes anything. Anyway, we do manage to take down that enemy Nagato. There are only 2 enemy ships remaining, and our team, you know, it looks like we've pulled it off here relatively easily, although from Salixczar's point of view and from this replay's point of view, not so much, right? We were really in the thick of it the entire time, but what this allowed our team to do is, you know, to solidify the north, to make sure that we can get that second point and have the lead while Salixczar and some allies were down here in B, really, you know, fighting it out, making sure that B was secure basically the entire time of the game, which was really good, and what you want to do as well. I know on most maps B is, you know, it's the middle point and it's usually, you know, fairly critical, but on shards it is just crucial. Have to have it. You're not going to do anything without the B point. It's just not going to happen, especially with the way the islands are and how tiny, compact everything is, once again, in the north and southern points. There we go. You can see one of our allies manages to finish off one of the enemy ships remaining. So now there is only one enemy ship remaining, the enemy Edinburgh there off in the distance. I do have an Edinburgh. I don't know if I've ever put a video up on her, but she's a great cruiser. I'm going to have to work on that, I suppose. Get one of those out there, because I have had some pretty decent games in her, and I'm getting fairly close to the Neptune as well, which is always good. Of course, I've been running the Ocean Soul camo on the Edinburgh and all the British cruisers, in fact, because I'm trying to grind out the line before any new ships come out, because there are other ships as well that I'm trying to grind, so it's just makes it a little easier. Anyway, we do see the Edinburgh is, you know, off in the distance, or rather we see that we can't see the Edinburgh, but there we go, pops up once again, and it's only going to take a few hits of armor piercing into the side of that Edinburgh, and that grouping looks really good. Shots go in, last citadel, kill, and a Confederate. Yes, what a game in the old Scharnhorst, and like I say, Salixczar's second game. So what is that, 6 kills, 11,000 experience. Of course, this is during, you know, bigger experience event or whatever. I don't know what the multipliers were at the time. But top of the team overall with well over 2,000 base experience, which is always nice to see. We can see how some of the damage is broken down, dealing out quite a bit of damage to a number of ships, also resulting in the Confederate. And then when all is said and done, Scharnhorst being premium, he does walk away with 618,000 credits and, that nice 11,000 experience. So moving into the next replay, we have Badpanda in his Tashkent. Now this is going to be one of those games, it's... You're doing it for the team. It's not, it's not necessarily going to be all about a whole bunch of damage. But sometimes, well, a lot of the times, I find that these games are really fairly enjoyable. Anyway, we're in the Tashkent. I am working towards the Tashkent. The Tashkent is represented in the game as a destroyer. However, she is more similar to a light cruiser than she is to a destroyer. At least that's what I understand. I mean, again, I don't actually have the Tashkent, but from what I understand and seen of the ship, that's what I hear. Now, I do understand that the Tashkent used to be fairly terrible, and nowadays my understanding is that she's not so bad because some things have changed to her that makes her a little more playable, apparently. So, yeah, I will eventually have the Tashkent. I'm working away at the Kiev right now. I know I've had the Kiev since forever, but still, I'll eventually get there. Anyway, we are on Shatter now. Shatter is a completely different map than when we were on the previous map here of come on, Thotgor, Shards? Yes, Shards. Shatter is totally different, right? Higher tier map, but we do also have the option, if you will, of maybe taking A and C at the beginning and focusing on those 2 points rather than the middle point. The middle point on this map generally comes a little later. And this is due to just the locations of the spawning, right? 2 groups will spawn to the north and south of the east and west point. So it's just the way it kind of works out. Anyway, Badpanda is going to move over here into the eastern point, and he's going to see what he can do about preventing the enemy capture, and of course, if all goes well, even capping out the point himself. The eastern point like this is crazy because it has this big mountain here in it, and it's just the worst when you get like a destroyer on the other side of the mountain just sitting there and blocking the cap. And then you just essentially have 2 destroyers sitting in this point the entire game just blocking it out. So it really takes teamwork in order to move beyond this sort of obstacle, because you do need to have maybe someone just sort of sitting there blocking the cap while having 1 or 2 other ships pushing beyond this obstacle here to take out that other enemy destroyer that's blocking the cap. But that being said, then they, the enemy team could even have, would even ideally have defenses, other allied ships, to prevent your capture. So take some teamwork to work beyond this obstacle here. You can't just charge beyond it, because even if you do, chances are you are going to die quickly thereafter, because not a whole lot of your allies are going to be able to charge beyond this right away, and by the time they do, the enemies are going to be all over it. But there we go. In this instance, we do manage to cap it right away, so this is really good. We can see Badpanda is going to be launching some torpedoes as well, popping his smoke, getting a nice smoke screen laid down so that he can sit in it and do some firing off onto some enemy ships. As well, it is providing some nice cover here for some of our allies. So we can see we do end up, getting our smoke screen down, getting our torpedoes off. We can see the enemy battleship over there is trying to evade some of our torpedoes, and we have an enemy, it looks like an enemy cruiser over there to deal with as well. 2 torpedo hits on the old enemy battleship, which is fantastic, because now, considerable damage there, about a quarter health, and we can see at least, the enemy doesn't see us right now, so we're going to be able to continue firing in on the player, and hopefully letting the player back on fire, right? Keeping the player on fire with your Russian destroyers is pretty important. Little imperative as well. You can see that we've come to a stop, and we are just going to start raining down shells as we can into the enemy battleship here, and there we go, managed to light a fire. This is sort of, regular play of a Russian destroyer. If you get yourself into a nice firing position where people don't see you, take advantage of it, especially with the Tashkent like this, because you do have fairly high detectability. People are going to be able to detect you from quite a ways away when you compare it to some of the other destroyers in game. So yeah, it's not such a good idea to be out front. You're all about trying to remain hidden, concealed, and you're going to use your smoke and your islands and the obstacles around you in order to get this done and accomplished. And then once you are managed to do that, then it's all going to be about harassing the enemy with your guns. Primarily, you probably aren't going to be, well, I guess there's always exceptions, and depending on your level of play and your skill in the ship itself, but you're probably not going to get a whole lot of damage and kills and like high stats and stuff in the ship itself, but that's fine. You are probably going to have much, you could argue, better games than that, because you're going to play a much more important role to the team, and it's all going to be about teamwork to help you succeed with this sort of vessel, because you are sort of like a light support, light cruiser, if you will, for your larger ships that are going to be dealing out a lot more of the damage. Your role is just to keep them on fire, keep them recycling those repairs and those the repair parties and heals and stuff, so that just wearing them down over time, right? So there we go. We can see that the team has managed to take B and C, so this is perfect. The enemies do seem to be sort of retreating over to the west side, so really good opening moves here by the team, especially the person who did have the foresight to go in there and capture the B zone. And that's generally how it works on this map here as well. You go for the A and C, the east and west points, and depending on what side your allies are able to take, whether they take the east side or the west side, if they can't, I mean, in this instance they couldn't take the west, so then those people at the west, any of those remaining, then quickly need to move themselves into B. And that's, you can kind of see the channels like that on this map as well, the way the islands are sort of spread out. And you do want to look at your mini-map as much as you possibly can, so you can see these things and recognize these things. It's just going to lead to a whole lot of good things for you, and increase your overall situational awareness, which is always good. So we do see an enemy destroyer there off in the distance. It looks like the enemy destroyer is duking it out with one of our destroyers. It might come down to a little bit of a knife fight here, you never know, with the enemy destroyer. Unfortunately, our allied destroyer wasn't able to finish off the player, but it does look like we have some allies in the background, there we go, who do manage to take down that player. So perfect, that was the last enemy destroyer. Now it's just us left in terms of destroyers, which is pretty good, I suppose, but again, need to keep in mind, right, the Tashkent isn't necessarily, typical destroyer. She's not, she doesn't have the stealth to go in there, to penetrate deep into the enemy lines and start capping and remain hidden and all that stuff. She can't do that. But what she can do is put a lot of shells downrange fairly quickly, keeping the enemies on fire, which is really good and important. So there we go. We see an enemy Baltimore off in the distance. We do put some shots into the enemy Baltimore as well, hoping to set some more fires, but it doesn't look like it's going to be possible this time around. We are going to launch our smoke again, and this is going to provide cover for the fleet once again, because if you look to the minimap, you'll notice that the fleet is coming through the B zone right now, and they're all basically behind Badpanda, right, coming through that zone. So by laying down our smoke like we did, this is going to cover them as they make their movement through the B cap zone. And it is something that you do want to be aware of when you're a destroyer. I'm terrible at it. I'm not going to say that I'm good at it, but I'm terrible at providing smoke to the fleet while I'm a destroyer. Generally, it's all, oh my god, no, I need my smoke for me. But some instances I do remember to actually do it, and it really helps out the fleet. So when you can think about it, and when it's advantageous to do so, you should definitely provide the smoke to the fleet. Keep in mind though, because this is also quite annoying, you can't launch the smoke and then sit in the smoke yourself. If there's no one out there spotting, the fleet won't see any of the enemy ships, so that doesn't do anyone any good. You still need to have someone outside of the smoke to spot the enemy vessels. Anyway, we can see the torpedoes that we launched off, all of them managed to miss, which wasn't so great, but we are, slowly working our way in and around the enemies over here on the western side of the map, hoping to be able to, again, just harass the enemies, right? And in doing so as well, it might put some of these enemies, into a better position for some of our allies in the background to get some shots off and take them down, right? So there's a whole lot to be said about this whole, harassing that you can do with these Russian destroyers. And in fact, I mean, the German destroyers are fairly similar. They're not as quick, that's for damn sure. Not as quick, and that kind of does suck. But whatever, you do what you can with what you have. So we have some torpedoes on the way down for the enemy battleship, which is great. Hopefully this player is going to run into a few of those at least, because the torpedoes always do end up doing a bit of damage. But unfortunately on that spread we don't get any hits, but we do have a bit of fire going into this enemy battleship, which is good. We do have some damage being dealt to the player, and there we go. Second spread of torpedoes, get a nice torpedo hit, and the kill on that enemy battleship. Don't need to worry about the player anymore. So taking a look at the minimap, seeing what we have going on, we do see that our allies are really taking it to the enemy ships here, right? We've only lost 2 allied ships so far, and the enemies have lost over half of their team. And we are really pushing strong into the enemy, the last enemy base over there in the east. This is the point, though, where it does kind of suck, right? Because if you do have a really good team like this, like we have here in this replay, again, like I said, you're not going to get a whole lot of damage for yourself. It's going to be spread out amongst the team more evenly, because the team being good and aggressive, it seems as well here. They're just pushing right into that last enemy point and just killing any enemy ship that remains. There's only 4 enemy ships remaining as well. So the chances of Panda getting himself over there to that cap zone before battle ends as well, we're over 900 points, is not very good. But whatever, right? You can really, it's hard to complain about something like that, because it's rare that you do have a good solid team in random battle. And when it does happen, it is pretty good. I bet, if these people were able to play a second battle together, it would be similar results as well as to what we saw here. We can see our allied ships are now moving into the A cap zone, and they've started to cap it as well. Doesn't really matter though, because victory is ours, battle is over. Taking a look at some of the results, right? Fairly average, 62,000 damage, 169,000 credits, 2,900 experience, but still a decent game. I enjoyed it. I mean, if we take a look at how the experience played out, and yeah, right, fairly even. A lot of people are over 1,000, over 1,100, and it's fairly even amongst the players. There's always going to be a top and always going to be a bottom, but it's fairly even. And of course, when all is said and done, at least we did walk away with some money and some credits, and of course we can see that our commander is almost up for his 2nd point. So fantastic. So excellent. So thanks guys for sending in the replay, and thank you for everyone else who continues to send in replays. I go through them as best I can and try and get them up, and I do really enjoy watching them through. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And of course, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.